The storm hit the cliffs with a roar that shook the castle walls. Lightning tore through the sky, illuminating the jagged stone towers and the dark sea below. Rain fell in sheets, hammering the windows like 1,000 tiny fists. Inside the tallest tower, Leora pressed her forehead against the cold glass, listening to the world she had never truly known. She had spent 20 years in this prison, though the castle's halls called it a home. 20 years in a room that smelled of damp stone and old books, surrounded by silence that spoke louder than voices. People called her insane. They whispered that she saw shadows and spoke to things that did not exist. Her own father had locked her away, convinced her mind was a danger. Leora had learned to live with the solitude, with the loneliness that gnawed at her soul. And yet in the quiet of the night she dreamed. She dreamed of skies that were not gray, of forests that stretched beyond the horizon, of freedom. She dreamed of feeling the wind on her face and the warmth of sunlight on her skin. Most of all, she dreamed of hearing a voice that was hers alone, telling her that she was more than the whispers of others. A sudden crack of thunder made her startle. The candle in her room flickered, sending dancing shadows across the walls. She knew she was not alone. Not really. The castle itself seemed alive with secrets, and she had long since learned to listen. Tonight the whispers felt different, urgent, like a warning. Then the door shook. At first she thought it was the storm, but the shaking continued, harder this time, as if something outside was trying to enter. Her heart thumped in her chest. No one had come to her tower in years. Visitors were forbidden. Guards had long since given up, leaving her alone with the wind and the rain. The door splintered under the force, and a figure stepped inside. Tall, dark, moving with a power that made the shadows themselves seem to bow. Leora's breath caught in her throat. His eyes were like night itself, deep and impossible to read, yet filled with a pull she could not resist. He was a predator, yes, but something in his presence whispered of understanding, of knowing her in ways no one else could. "I am Kalen," he said, his voice low, smooth and commanding. "I have come for you." Leora's first instinct was fear. She had been warned about strangers, about men who promised safety, but delivered only more chains. But this fear was different. It was sharp, yes, but beneath it was something else, a spark of curiosity, a hunger for what she had never had. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I am what you need," Kalen said, stepping closer. "You do not belong here. You are not what they say you are. You are meant for more than this prison." The words struck her like a blade. All her life she had been told she was broken, cursed, unworthy. And here was a stranger telling her she was more. She wanted to believe him, but doubt still curled like smoke in her mind. "Why, would you care?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the storm. Kalen's eyes softened, just for a moment, and in that softness, Leora saw the weight of centuries. "Because I have seen what they cannot see. I have felt the chains that bind you, and I know what it is to be trapped by the world's cruelty. I will not leave you here." She wanted to reach out, to take his hand, but her legs felt rooted to the ground. She was not used to trust. She was not used to hope. And yet the very air between them vibrated with a promise she could not deny. "I cannot," she started, then faltered. "I am dangerous. I do not know what I am capable of." Kalen smiled, a shadow of a smile, and shook his head. "It is not your danger that frightens me. It is their ignorance. They have called you insane because they are too small to understand you. But I understand, Leora. I see you." Her heart ached at the sound of her name on his lips, the way he spoke as if she were precious, as if her life mattered. And for the first time in years, the walls of her tower felt less like a prison and more like a memory, something left behind in the storm. The wind howled outside, and the castle groaned under the fury of nature. Kalen extended his hand. "Come with me. You can choose freedom tonight, or you can remain here alone and forgotten. The choice is yours." Leora's mind raced. To step into the unknown with this powerful being could mean death, or it could mean life, real life. Her hands shook as she considered the offer. Fear clawed at her, but so did longing, that deep, aching longing she had buried for 2 decades. I don't know if I can," she admitted, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You can," Kalen said softly. "I will not harm you, but you must trust yourself as much as you trust me. That is the only way forward." A lightning strike illuminated the tower, casting long shadows across the room. In that moment, Leora saw herself, Not the frightened girl the world had called insane, but a woman strong enough to choose her own path, to seize her own fate. Her fingers brushed against Kaylin's and she felt a pulse, a warmth that seemed impossible in the chill of the storm. The storm outside intensified, wind and rain battering the stone walls, but inside, a different kind of storm began to stir, a storm of hope, of awakening, of the first step toward freedom. Finally, Leora took a deep breath, her eyes meeting Kaylin's. I will come, she said, her voice firming with each word. I will follow you. Kaylin's expression did not change, but his eyes shone with something unspoken, something dangerous, yet tender. He extended his hand fully, and she took it. The moment their fingers intertwined, it felt as if a chain around her soul had broken. She had not just stepped out of her prison. She had stepped into a world that could either destroy her or set her free. As they descended the tower steps together, the castle seemed to shift, the shadows retreating as if aware that their prisoner had chosen a new master. Yet the storm outside raged with a violence that mirrored the uncertainty of the path ahead. Leora clung to Kaylin's hand, feeling the strength in his grip, feeling the silent promise that she would not face the darkness alone. The outer gates loomed ahead, massive and imposing. Kaylin placed a hand on the door, and with a strength that seemed beyond human, it swung open. Rain lashed at them. Wind tore at their cloaks, but Kaylin stood firm, a sentinel against the chaos. Once you step beyond this gate, he said, his voice calm amidst the storm, there is no turning back. Are you ready? Leora hesitated for only a heartbeat. Then she nodded. Yes, together they stepped into the night. The cliffs yawned below, the waves crashing like ancient drums of warning and welcome. The storm raged, but Leora no longer felt the chill of fear. In its place burned a strange, terrifying hope, a hope she had not dared to feel in 20 years. As they disappeared into the darkness, a scream echoed from the castle, but it was not hers. It was the echo of the world she had left behind, a world that had called her insane and locked her away. And though it screamed, she did not look back. Ahead lay forest she had never seen, paths she could not yet imagine, and a being of darkness who might destroy her, or save her. Her heart pounded with anticipation, with fear, with longing. For the first time she understood the meaning of freedom, and the price it demanded. The wind carried a whisper through the trees, soft and chilling. She is not what they said. She is hers and she is his, and in that whisper, Leora felt the stirrings of something she had never felt before, something that would change her life forever. The storm raged, but so did her soul, awakening to the world and the creature who had freed it. And though she could not yet see the path ahead, she knew one truth. Nothing would ever be the same again. The night air was thick with mist as Kaylin led Leora through the winding paths of the forest. The storm had passed, leaving the trees dripping with rain and the ground slick with mud. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting silver shadows that danced like spirits across the forest floor. Leora's heart raced not with fear, but with a mix of awe and uncertainty. She had left her prison, yet the world outside was unlike anything she had imagined. Kaylin walked with a silent confidence, each step deliberate and unhurried. He seemed attuned to the forest in a way Leora could not yet understand, avoiding roots and rocks with an almost supernatural grace. Every so often he would glance back at her, his expression unreadable, yet there was a careful patience in his eyes. You will need to trust yourself, he said, breaking the silence. Out here the world is neither kind nor forgiving. But you are not the same girl they left behind. You are stronger than you realize. Leora swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. She wanted to believe him, but the echoes of 2 decades of isolation whispered otherwise. You are weak. You are dangerous. You are nothing. She had learned to live with those words, to let them shape her, but Kaylin's presence challenged everything. I don't know if I'm ready, she admitted, her voice barely above the rustle of leaves. You will be, Kaylin replied simply. Fear is a part of the journey, but it will not control you. Not if you choose otherwise. The forest opened into a clearing, revealing a ruined city bathed in moonlight. Crumbled towers and broken walls spoke of a civilization long past, of lives once vibrant now swallowed by time. Leora stepped forward cautiously, her hand brushing against Kaylin's for reassurance. The ruins held an eerie beauty, and she felt a strange kinship with them. They were broken like her, yet still standing against the passage of years. This place, she whispered, it's beautiful and sad at the same time. It is a reminder, Kalen said, his eyes scanning the horizon. Even in ruin there is strength. Even in darkness there is light. You must remember that, Leora. It is the same with people. As they walked deeper into the city, Leora felt her senses heighten. She noticed the way shadows shifted unnaturally, the whisper of the wind carrying voices she could almost understand. Kalen did not seem surprised. He moved as if he had walked these ruins 1,000 times before. You have power, he said, suddenly stopping her. I can feel it in you. It is raw, untrained, but it is there, stronger than most mortals can ever dream of. Leora shook her head. I don't know what you mean. I am nothing. I am just a girl who talks to shadows. Kalen tilted his head, his gaze piercing yet calm. Do you hear them? He asked. Not just see them, but truly hear. You do not need to be afraid of what you can feel. You need to learn to control it. And I will teach you. She looked at him, conflicted. The idea of power was tempting, yes, but it also frightened her. All her life, her abilities, or what others called madness, had been punished. And yet, there was a pull she could not deny, a hunger to understand herself fully, to finally step beyond the chains of fear and doubt. I want to try, she whispered, almost to herself. Kalen's lips curved in a faint, approving smile. Then we begin. The lessons were not easy. Leora spent hours learning to listen to the whispers of the ruins, to feel the currents of energy that flowed through the earth, and to focus the visions that came to her in fleeting, fragmented flashes. Kalen was a patient teacher, guiding her without pushing, encouraging her when she faltered, but never shielding her from the truth. You cannot run from who you are, he said one night as they rested beside a silvered river. The shadows, the visions, they are part of you. You must face them, embrace them, or they will consume you. Leora's hands trembled as she dipped them into the water, feeling the pulse of life beneath her fingertips. She wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to vanish into the depths and escape the intensity of her own awakening. But Kalen's presence steadied her, a silent anchor in the swirling storm of her mind. Days, or perhaps weeks, passed. Time seemed different in this hidden world, measured not by hours but by the rhythm of shadows and moonlight. Leora grew stronger, more aware of her gifts and more aware of Kalen. He was a constant presence, both guide and enigma, and she found herself drawn to him in ways she could not name. Yet the forest was not empty, and the ruins were not abandoned. A rival vampire, dark and cunning, had been watching. He sensed Leora's awakening, and with it, the threat she posed to his designs. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in blood-red streaks, the rival appeared. His movements were swift and silent, his eyes cold and calculating. Kalen sensed him immediately. Stay behind me, he commanded, his voice low and dangerous. Leora's heart pounded, fear and adrenaline mingling in a way she had not felt since her imprisonment. She wanted to hide, to run, but something in her stirred. A defiance, a spark of courage she did not know she possessed. The rival moved closer, his presence like a shadow over the moonlight. Kalen's hands glowed faintly with power, the air thickening with tension. Leora felt her own energy respond, a subtle current of strength that mirrored his. For the first time, she realized that she was not powerless, that she had a role in the struggle unfolding around her. Do you see now? Kalen asked softly, his eyes meeting hers. You are not alone. You are never alone. The rival hissed, retreating into the darkness, but the encounter left a lingering unease. Leora knew he would return, and next time he would not hesitate. Kalen turned to her, his gaze steady but haunted.
The world is dangerous, Leora, and so are those who fear your light.
You must be ready, she nodded, determination hardening within her. Fear had guided her for too long. Now she would let courage take its place. The night stretched on, and in the quiet moments Leora and Kalen shared glimpses of their true selves. Words were few, but their silences spoke volumes. She saw the weight of centuries in his eyes, the loneliness beneath his strength, and for the first time she felt a connection that went beyond words. She was not merely a pupil. She was becoming something greater, shaped by danger, trust, and the unspoken bond forming between them. Yet even as she felt this new closeness, doubts lingered. Could she truly belong in this world? Could she trust a creature so powerful, so unlike anything she had known? And could Kalen trust her, knowing the darkness that had grown inside her soul during years of solitude? The answers were not clear, but the journey had begun and there was no turning back. One night, under the light of a blood-red moon, Leora wandered to the edge of a cliff overlooking the ruins. She felt the wind whip through her hair, felt the pulse of the world beneath her feet, and felt her heart ache with longing for something she could not yet name. Kalen appeared beside her silently, his presence comforting and overwhelming all at once. "You have grown stronger," he said, almost as if reading her thoughts. "But strength is only the beginning. You must learn to face your fears, to embrace them, or they will control you." She turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "And if I fail?" "You will not fail," he said, his hand brushing against hers. "Not if you trust yourself, and not if you trust me." For a long moment they stood together, the ruins and the moonlight surrounding them, shadows stretching and dancing like ghosts of the past. Leora felt something stir deep within her, a sense of possibility, of hope, of a future that was hers to shape. But in the distance, hidden in the forest's dark embrace, the rival watched. His eyes glowed with malice, and a plan began to form, one that would test both Leora and Kalen in ways they could not yet imagine. And then, the wind carried a faint, chilling whisper through the trees. "She is not ready. She does not belong, and yet she will belong in the end." Leora shivered, unsure if the words were a warning or a promise. Kalen's hand tightened around hers, steadying her. "Whatever comes," he said softly, "we face it together. You are no longer alone." Her heart swelled with a mixture of fear and courage, and for the first time, she felt that the world beyond her prison was not something to dread, but something to fight for, something to embrace. And yet, the shadows deepened, and the rival's presence loomed ever closer, waiting for the moment to strike. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with danger, longing, and tests that would push them both to their limits. Leora knew one truth above all else. Her life had changed forever, and the world she had once feared would now demand everything from her. But with Kalen by her side, she was ready to face the darkness and perhaps to find the light within herself. The first light of dawn barely touched the ruins when Leora awoke to a cold wind cutting through the clearing. The forest, usually silent in the early morning, hummed with a tension she could feel in her bones. She shivered, not from the chill but from a premonition she could not shake. Something was coming, something that would demand everything she had learned, everything she had become. Kalen was already awake, standing at the edge of the ruins, his dark eyes scanning the forest like a predator sensing prey. The faint glow of the morning mist outlined his sharp features, and Leora felt a pull in her chest. A mixture of fear and something deeper, something she had not dared to name before. "You feel it too," she said quietly, stepping beside him. "Yes," Kalen replied, his voice low, almost reverent. "The rival has returned, and he is not alone. He will test you, Leora. But remember this. Fear is a tool, not a master. You are stronger than you know." Leora nodded, gripping the folds of her cloak. She had come far since the night Kalen had freed her from her tower, far beyond the lonely girl imprisoned by fear. She had learned to trust herself, to harness the power within her, and to face the shadows of her mind. Yet this trial felt different. The threat was not only physical, but something deeper, something that could shake the very foundation of her spirit. The sound came first, a whisper, then a rustle, then a chorus of unnatural voices rising from the darkened forest. Shadows moved thick and fast, converging toward the ruins. The rival vampire stepped into the clearing, flanked by creatures that twisted the light, their forms strange and threatening. His eyes burned with malice, but they also carried a sharp intelligence, a knowledge of Leora that made her pulse quicken. Kalen moved before she could react, positioning himself between her and the threat. "Stay close," he said, and the air around him seemed to thrum with energy. The creatures hesitated, sensing the power in him, but the rival did not falter. "You've grown," the rival said, his voice smooth but venomous. "Stronger than I imagined. But strength alone will not save you." Leora felt a surge of something she had not expected, anger, defiance, and a flicker of confidence. She was not the helpless girl they had all thought her to be. The years of isolation, the whispers of shadows, the teachings of Kalen, they had all led to this moment. She would not be broken again. Kalen's gaze met hers, steady and encouraging. "Trust yourself," he said simply. "Trust what you have learned. And trust me." The rival lunged first, moving with a speed that made the forest blur around him. Kalen met him in a clash that shook the ground. dark energy flaring and colliding with the force of raw power. Leora watched. Her breath caught between fear and awe, then felt a current of energy flow through her own hands. The shadows around the clearing responded, bending toward her command, as if recognizing her as a force to be reckoned with. She stepped forward, unsure but determined. Her voice, low and firm, spoke the words that had been whispering in her mind for days, the words that held power she had only begun to understand. The shadows around her rose, weaving through the forest like living silk, slowing the creatures advancing toward them. The rival hissed, taken aback, but he was far from defeated. "Impressive," he said, his eyes narrowing. "But raw power without control is dangerous." Leora's heart raced. She could feel the fear creeping in, the old voice telling her she was not enough. But then she felt Kalen's presence beside her, solid and unwavering, and she remembered all she had learned. The visions, the whispers, the strength she had embraced, they were hers, and she would not let them betray her. She focused, drawing the energy of the ruins, the forest, and her own soul into one steady current. The creatures faltered, their forms wavering like smoke in the wind. Leora's confidence grew, each heartbeat a drum of defiance. She had been called insane, imprisoned, and forgotten, but here, in the midst of danger, she was alive, and she was powerful. Kalen's hand brushed hers as he fought, and the connection sent a shock of warmth through her. For a moment, fear and longing intertwined, and she realized the depth of her trust, the bond that had grown between them. It was not only survival that linked them, but something more profound, something that had taken root in the shadowed corners of their hearts. The rival, seeing the tide turn, unleashed a wave of dark magic toward Leora. She wavered for a heartbeat, the shadows around her flickering, but then Kalen shouted, "Focus! You are not alone," and she felt the currents within her stabilize. With a surge of energy, she directed the force back, pushing the rival and his creatures into retreat. The clearing fell silent, save for the labored breaths of the two who remained standing. Leora's hands trembled, but her eyes shone with triumph. Kalen approached, his expression softening as he looked at her. "You did it," he said. "You faced the darkness and controlled it. You are no longer the girl who trembled in a tower. You are something greater." Tears welled in Leora's eyes, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of release, of relief, of recognition that she had truly stepped into her own power. I was so afraid," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know if I could." Kalen placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "Fear is natural. Courage is choice. And tonight you chose it." They stood together in the ruins, the early sun breaking through the clouds, casting light on the aftermath of battle. The rival vampire had fled, but Leora knew this was only the beginning. The world was vast and full of threats, but it was also full of possibilities she had never imagined. For the first time, she allowed herself to look at Kalen, not just as her guide, not just as a being of power, but as someone she cared for, someone who had seen her in her entirety and still chosen to stand by her side. The storm of emotion inside her, fear, longing, admiration, trust, was intense, almost overwhelming. Kalen's gaze met hers, and in that moment, the air seemed to hum with unspoken understanding. Neither needed to speak. The bond between them had been forged in shadow and fire, tested in fear and triumph. They were equals now, partners in a world that had once sought to break them. "You have grown stronger than I imagined," Kalen said softly, "and you have embraced what many fear. You are extraordinary, Leora." She shook her head, a small smile forming despite the exhaustion. "I am still learning," she said, "but I feel free. For the first time, I feel free." Kalen's expression softened further, and he extended his hand. "Then let us step into this world together. There is much to see, much to learn, and many challenges ahead, but we face them as one." Leora took his hand, feeling the warmth, the strength, the promise of safety mingled with danger. She had once been locked away, called insane, told that she was worthless. Now she was alive, empowered, and standing beside a being who respected her strength and feared her not, but valued it. The ruins stretched before them, shadows retreating in the light of a new day, yet hints of darkness lingered in every corner. The rival would return, threats would arise, and the path ahead was uncertain. But Leora was no longer afraid. She had faced the shadows of her mind, the darkness of the forest, and the power of an enemy more dangerous than any mortal could be. She turned to Kalen, Their hands entwined and felt a surge of hope she had never thought possible. Together they would face the unknown, confront the darkness, and carve a place for themselves in a world that had tried to destroy them. And as they walked from the ruins, the morning sun breaking over the horizon, Leora felt the whisper of something ancient, something powerful stirring in the distance, a reminder that the journey was far from over. But this time she did not tremble. She was ready. For the first time in her life, Leora truly believed she was free.